enormous edifices. Well, why did they do that? And the people will have no answer for them, because there will be no context. It will be impossible to explain, the way that religions are always impossible to truly explain, because this is a religion. We are engaged in an act of huge and ongoing worship. We have created these things, these corporations. We worship them, we give them the strength they need, and they hang above us like stars, fixed in the heavens. If you go outside at night, you can see them shining down on us. You can take your children outside, and you can point up into the sky and say, look, there's Goldman Sachs, and there's Amazon.com, and there's Apple, and there's Dell, and all of them arrayed across the heavens, shining down on us. We do this. We educate our children this way. We show them the shape of the world as we know it to be. And these corporations that began as trading companies for the Dutch, the idea of the corporation has grown and grown, and now they're endowed with all the rights of man and none of the responsibilities. And we rail about that, but we accept it. We accept it as an inevitable fact of our lives. We accept it as the way things are. When we look out into the world, we do not remember that just a few hundred years ago there were no corporations. 1,000 years ago, nothing of the social order that exists now is practically in existence. You go back in time and all this is washed away. But here and now, where we stand, it seems so real, doesn't it? It seems so unstoppable. It seems so clear, like a pyramid rising up above us, that it could never fade, never fail. It feels like it is the inevitable future. And in this time, at the beginning of the 21st century, it is the age of the American Empire. It is the age of my country's empire. My country, who lost its soul and itself when it set off that bomb at Trinity. And they rose up and became the military-industrial complex that it is now. I weep for what we have become. We reach our hand out to dominate this world economically and socially and politically. We have reached our hand out. And that military-industrial complex that is woven through my culture, that is corporatism in its naked form. My government is not a government. It is suborned by the corporations that are woven through it. It is part of the lifeblood of everything that happens. And in each and every other country, the corporations gain more and more power. When they look back on this age, they will say, there they all were at the beginning of the 21st century, the second millennium, and they did not know then, but it was beginning of the end of the age of the nation state and the rise of the corporation. That is what they will say. That is where we sit in time. And the truth is that for all the horrors the 20th century visited on us, Stalin and Mao and Hitler, these monsters are monsters of ego. They are monstrous things. They are people who were once just like us, human beings, who then take power for themselves and are twisted by that power. And so they do things that are almost unimaginable to us. They are horrors, but they are still human. They are still human, and that is why their evil is comprehensible to us. None of us wants to feel affinity with Mao, with Stalin, with Hitler, but it is possible to do so. It is possible to go back and see the stories of their childhood. It is possible to dissect their histories, and so many have done so, and to look through those biographies and see the strands and strains, the social forces that were what led them to the place where they did what they did. It does not mean we accept it or condone it, but we can understand it. Why? Because it's a human story, and we are human beings. We are good at understanding impulse. We're good at understanding emotion and narrative. That's the reason I can talk to you this morning. Is because you are human and I am human. There's something that happens in the dark. This gestalt, you coalesce into an audience. Then we can actually talk about something. It's a marvelous, marvelous process. It's an inherently human one. I treasure it, and so should you. The whole fact that we can come together like this. Mao and Stalin and Hitler are horrifying, but they are human. The corporations are not human. And you need to remember this. You need to remember it every time you're tempted to speak glibly about how evil a corporation is being. A corporation can never be evil. A corporation can never aspire to that kind of humanity. Corporations are inherently amoral. They exist outside of any framework of humanity. They do not understand humanity at all. And we have chosen to create them. We have chosen to endow them with these powers. And now they live amongst us and above us. We made that choice. We gave them that strength. We continue to give that strength to them day after day after day. And that is why this is a war. There's a war going on right now between the human and the inhuman. And as horrifying as the human is, as horrifying as we can be to each other in this room, insofar as anyone here can imagine under terrible circumstances murdering another person, as terrible as the things any of us can cook up in this room, we are not actually corporations. Because the corporations have not even a glimmer of humanity. They are constructs that wander the landscape, doing what they will. What future anthropologists will wonder at, though, they will ask themselves, if that's all true, why did they do it? Why did they do it to themselves? Because, let us be clear, we can all take a lot of comfort in thinking that they're these Lovecraftian creatures from outside of reality impinging on us, but we do it to ourselves. There would not be corporations if there were not people to run them, were not people to work them. The corporation is so inhuman because it is almost existent without the people to motivate it. There is no corporation at all. A corporation is a compact between the people who are inside of it. In its oldest form, the original corporations had charters that said what a corporation was for. You would only make a corporation if you were trying to incorporate to do something, some project larger than any one individual. And then when you came together to make that project realized, it would also, in that charter, have the terms of dissolution. Because once you were done, whatever that project was, of course, you would dissolve that corporation, because you wouldn't just leave something like that lying around. Because if you did that, you can imagine a world where those corporations would just grow. Because what else would they do if they had no objective and no ending? They would just grow. They would become very different than us, alien to us, because they would have no arc to their days. Everyone in this room is going to die. You are. I assure you. And so will I. And thank God for that, because that gift of death is what defines us. That gift is what makes us human. The arc of our days ensures that we will live a life that is measured. Corporations do not die, and they have no conception of death. They just go on and on and on and on, and because there is no arc to them, there's nothing human in them. There's nothing that can stop them in that sense. Corporations would not exist without us, without you. You are complicit. I am complicit. We are all complicit. We make this possible. We are in a hell of our own making. We live in here, and we make it day after day after day. We live in this landscape. So the question becomes, what are we going to do? What are we actually going to do? Because that's where these talks break down, isn't it? We rant and rave over the state of things. We talk about the landscape as we see it, and then when we're done, we sigh and we return to the world as it was. We whisper to ourselves, I don't know, I'd like to do something, but it's so hard to do anything. It'd be so much easier if someone else did something. I don't know. I don't even know what I could do. The guy is so annoying. Jesus. I want to go get another cup of coffee. I hear you. I hear you. The truth is that you need a new metaphor. You need a new landscape. You need to stop pretending that you are free. Because every day you believe that you are free. You suffer from terrible guilt. Why do you live in such a world where you have so much but have done so little? That noise. You need to understand that you are not free. You need to understand that you live in an occupied country. Your country is occupied by corporations. And like any occupied country, there are lessons that we can draw from. There's a history of the duty of resistance. You need to look back to Vichy France. You need to look back to what people do when they are occupied. They resist. And they resist in 1,000 different little ways. Resistance needs to become our religion. If you want to do this, if you want to be on the side of humanity, you need to resist. And in occupied France, not everyone was a sexy member of some resistant fighter, although, of course, in the years that followed, after the war was won, everybody was in the resistance, weren't they? Like, once it turned sexy, then everybody was in the resistance doing something. But you know that's not true, right? You know that most people are not in the resistance. You know that many of you out there in the darkness aren't in the resistance now. I mean, I'm glad you came to this talk, and I'm sure in your hearts you'd like to resist, but when you weigh yourself, I think you'll find yourself wanting. I know I find myself wanting. I know there's so much more I could do. There's so many things I could do. But there are concrete steps we can definitely take. The biggest, I think, is to understand that commoditization is a deep, deep problem. We often think of ourselves as consumers. Even in our resistance, we'll say to ourselves, what could I buy? What's the right thing I could buy? I want to spend my money somewhere where it's effective. I want to only spend my money on things that are the right things to buy. That. I don't care. I don't care what you're buying. I care about what you do. What do you do? Because there are people out there in the darkness right now, today, whom I am looking out at, who work at corporations. You are part of the problem. You are absolutely part of the problem. And don't lie to yourself and tell yourself that you're not. Don't leave here tittering, thinking how it's not you, and you do a lot of nice things, and you give money to some great charities. Wonderful. No, you. You're part of the problem. You are. And if you're serious about resistance, you need to start today and figure out how you're going to stop being part of the problem. People don't have to work for and inside of corporations. They don't have to. People can find things to do. And the more people who do not work inside a corporate context, the better it is for humanity. And there are levels, like anything. Each of you is going to be the arbiter of your own existence. I mean, it's not like I'm going to judge you. You're just going to have yourself to judge you in the night when you lie in your bed. You know what the truth is. I do what I can do. In my own life, for instance, I freelance everywhere. I work with corporations all the time. I'm constantly sucked in that corporate. But I do everything I can not to be chained up. I do everything I can to suck as little as possible. And when I can, I try to pick the really nice. I do what I can. And it's important to me, for instance, years ago, for tax purposes, people were always trying to get me to incorporate. I'm never going to incorporate. Last thing I'm going to do is make another corporation. It's important, because every corporation that's made is a limited liability corporation. Every single one that's created limits liability. You understand that abstraction is the central tool of corporatism. Once you create layers of abstraction, once human beings are not responsible for the things that are done inside that company, that is how things start to go wrong. If you have a job, if you do something, you need to actually be able to explain what you do in a single sentence. If you cannot explain what you do in a single sentence, you are probably a corporate whore. You know that's true, don't you? Because the systems get more and more complicated. If you're actually doing something, you should be able to explain it really quickly. Like, my job is, I talk to people. You have different skills. Different skills and gifts, all of you. But you can all work. You can all do things in this society. I know you can. Human beings are amazing. And what an amazing world it would be if more of us actually had jobs that did something. That looked and fought and scrambled to look for something in their lives they could actually do, and then made those spaces for themselves and then did those things. It's possible. It is possible. Corporations need us to be their priests and their soldiers, they need us to shuffle the papers back and forth. They need us to have day jobs. They exploit us that way. If we leave, that is one less person that they have. And each new free person is a new free voice to actually speak about the shape of the world. And there are some careers that bear special responsibility. If you're a banker, you have a lot to answer for. It's an abstract job. It's a highly abstract job. And odds are you have not done a single thing with your life. Odds are you have taken money and used it to make more money. And you should be ashamed of yourself that you live on this earth, that you breathe this air. You had all this time and you did gall with it. You don't have to do that, though. You could actually do something. I've never met a banker yet who wasn't smart enough to know that they actually had other gifts. Because the world is filled with gifted humans, and no one is gifted at banking. That's a sham and a delusion. That's a perversion where you take the gifts you did have to do something worthwhile with your time, and you piss them out on the ground so you can grab money from other people. It's bull. If you know bankers, you need to know this in your heart. You need to know it, and you need to distance yourself from them. Lawyers are close behind. It is possible for a lawyer to use the law to work toward justice. It is possible. I have almost never seen it in my life, but it is possible. And if you are a lawyer, ooh, you're walking right on that knife's edge, aren't you? You're right there, ready to fall right into the devil's pocket. Because honestly, are you actually using your skills to work toward justice? Are you?
No.
Day after day. I want to hear about your pro bono work. I don't want to hear what you do on the side. I want to hear about what you do, what your job is, what you've dedicated your life to. Because all of you, in this culture, like my own, there's a strong streak of Puritanism here. We are what we do. What you choose to do with your life defines you. That is where you resist corporatism. They need us to work for them. If you have friends who are lawyers that work in a corporate context, you need to quit them. You need to shun them. You need to drop them. Social shaming is a very powerful impulse. They need to know the truth, and they need to be discarded. And that shame increases, and we inculcate it in our children. There will be less in the next generation. All the lawyers and bankers will have to breed with each other, and they will have stunted children, who are the only ones who will go on to be more bankers and lawyers, and eventually the whole breed will die out entirely. And this brings up an important point. It's very important. This needs to be a joyful resistance. There has to be humor woven through it. Some of you are feeling that now. You're like, is he serious? Oh my God. I don't know. He's kind of funny. I don't think he's serious. I'm very serious. Let me clear that up for you if you have a problem with levels. But it has to be a joyful resistance. The truth is, this is a human movement. We are human beings. If we do not resist joyfully, if we forget how to laugh, how to actually open ourselves up and laugh, we will destroy ourselves before we actually get anywhere. That's the problem with the atheism movement. I'm an atheist. I love atheism. God. That guy. Stupid God. But the atheists are insufferable. They're totally insufferable as a movement. It's horrible. They spend all their time screaming and yelling in this horrific, nasty kind of way. No, you need both sides. You need to take all the fire and brimstone I've been pouring out on you and acknowledge we're at the Festival of Dangerous Ideas. So, I'm bringing it kind of old school style. You have to take that and you need to combine it with the steel, the flexibility to laugh in their faces, to laugh at them, to laugh at their contexts, to open up your mouth and let the sound come out. I have friends right now in the city I come from. They're occupying Wall Street. They have been there for days and days and days, and did the world laugh at them? The world still laughs at them, that they would be so foolish to think that this would even work. But even now, more people are joining them. And even if they fall, they win. Even if they fall, even if they fail, they cannot fail. Because the whole effort is to crack the door open even a sliver, to open your mind to the idea that there could be a different context, that there could be a different way that things could actually be. We begin to forget. We begin to forget immediately as we walk through our lives. We are so good at erasing what we see. We're so good at lying to ourselves. I know it is hard to hear that you are a corporate whore, but you are. You are, and you need to embrace that. You need to understand that you are if you're ever going to be free of it, if you're ever going to try to do something with your life that doesn't actually make the world more. It's important. If even one person in the sound of my voice made that decision, made the decision to not work with the corporations, if it was one more person rose up, this life of mine would be worthwhile. We need to throw ourselves into the fire that way. That's how movements work. You need to be able to sacrifice yourself. What do you want? You want to live forever? That's what the corporations are doing. In World War I, they would tell the doughboys as they jumped over the trenches, they ran towards the machine gun nest. They would say, "What do you want to live forever?" And the men would jump up into the fire and they would run forward. This is considerably easier than that. I know you're attached to your way of life. I know you like your job. I bet you enjoy your glass desk and your view of the downtown business district. And it's really pleasant the way you have enough extra money to go to those lunch places. But it's wrong. It's wrong, and you know it. You always knew it. You always knew it. You need to make choices. If you're going to be part of this thing, you need to let it go. You need to find a sustainable way to not be doing that. The truth is that we are together. We are human beings. We are bound together in this journey, each and every one of us. We are in this room and we barely know each other. We've spent only these brief minutes together. But I feel like you are my brothers and sisters. I feel like we are bound together by this human thing. They say that the Great Pyramid, the largest of the pyramids, took 40 years between its planning and its execution and its construction. 40 years. Incredibly long, a human lifetime, especially in those days. But also a twinkling. Almost like no time at all, 40 years. In the great span of nations, even less time. When we look at geology and nature, almost no time at all. And what wonders they made, that marvelous edifice that we do not understand, that sits there, challenging us to actually dream that things could be different. When they finished that pyramid, they buried a pharaoh inside, and they buried his queen, and they buried the workers. Not all the workers, but the very special workers. They buried the very special workers and the workers' wives and their children. What a thing that must have been. Picture it, if you would. Return to that white, perfect shape. Not what it is now, diminished, but what it must have looked like just after the death of the pharaoh, just completed, shining there. Not a mark of pollution on it, because there is no pollution in the world yet. Just a perfect white thing along the banks of the Nile, and then they process inside. And imagine that you are one of those workers inside, awaiting your destiny with your wife and your child. You are so lucky to have been part of this thing. You are so lucky to have spent your life and the lives of those who came before you in building this thing. You sit inside that mausoleum, and there must have been a moment when they began to seal it up. There must have been a moment for those men and women when a wild human cry must have rose up inside of them. They must have thought, "Oh my God, my children and me, what am I doing here? What am I doing here?" There must have been a moment Probably just as they put the last block into place, there must have been a moment when they said, why did I do this? Why did I give my life over to this thing? And perhaps it was such an inchoate scream, they wouldn't even be able to frame it. They wouldn't even be able to say what alternative there could have been. They can't imagine one. But something human in them struggles to accept that they will die in this dark place alone, that their children will die, that they have condemned their children, their children's children, and everyone that follows them into darkness. There must have been a moment when they struggled with that. And outside that dark mausoleum, that dark corporate place of death, the Nile sails by imperturbable, immortal, the same as it has for thousands of years. And the women go down there in the springtime today, just as they do thousands of years ago. They go down there today in the spring to do the rites, the same rites that have evolved over time, the ones they did for Isis and Anubis, the rites of spring. It's spring outside this building right now. You're sitting in the darkness. But when you walk outside, the light will shine down on you. It is spring. It is a time of rebirth. You bury the things from the past and you hope that they will grow, that something will take root, that some seed will flower into being. And above us, the stars that shine on us today, those fixed, immutable stars I told you about, they are the same stars that shone 5,000 years ago. They are the same stars shining down. We cannot change the stars. We cannot change the fixed things in the universe. They are fixed and larger than ourselves, but we decide what constellations there are. We draw the connections between those stars, because that is the human story. We shape the world as we want to see it by making those mythologies. And as we shape the world, we shape ourselves and the future.